Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, the channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Tucker Carlson does it once again. If you need a man to deliver, then he's one of your guys. You know, Tucker used to be one of those establishment guys, even self-admitted he's said it a million times, but over the last 5-6 years he's had a political evolution, many moments of epiphany. And so now, I mean, if you think about it, he's a freaking weapon. He's got all the mainstream name recognition, he's got all the insider information, he knows how the system works, how it's made from the inside. While at the same time, now he's totally independent, he's got maybe a little bit of a vendetta, you can argue, and he's become quite anti-establishment. Put a guy like that next to your typical neocon running for president, it's freaking game over, and that's exactly what happened here. I don't know what Mike Pence was thinking. Doesn't seem like Mike Pence does much thinking these days. I mean, the idea that he'd be running for president in the first place is a complete farce unless it's some sort of money laundering scheme, which it probably is if you think about it. But anyways, Mike Pence showed up at a political event, some sort of summit, and he sat face to face with Tucker Carlson, and let's just say Tucker Carlson's line of questioning set up a situation where Mike Pence's political campaign, and you'd argue probably his larger political career and ambitions, have been abruptly ended. Game over, career over. He is done. You want to run against Mike Pence in an election? Simply play Mike Pence's own words on the record, and it's over. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright, folks, if you plan on doing anything in the public eye, if you plan on doing anything especially in the world of politics, you gotta be able to get the temperature of the room, you know? You gotta be able to understand your audience, and when it comes to the Republican base, it's an ever-changing, dynamic sort of entity, body of people. Ideas are shifting, people are independent, they have independent critical thought, and so viewpoints tend to shift. If you're a politician planning on representing these people, you got to be able to understand what way the wind is blowing. You got to understand how your voters feel. Yeah, Mike Pence has none of that. Mike Pence is, I don't know, stuck in the 1980s or something. He's stuck in the Bush-Cheney way of thinking, and it's just, you know, career-ending stuff.
Along the way, the Biden administration has been slow in providing military support. Make no mistake about this. We promised them 33 Abrams tanks in January. I heard again 2 weeks ago in Ukraine, they still don't have them. We've been telling them we'll train their F-16 pilots, but now they're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, have you, I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years. Yeah. Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet, your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble.
Tucker Carlson laid out a very simple scenario, challenging the neocon uniparty perspective. We get it, you guys are diehard in wanting to, you know, fund these endless wars and ensure that this Ukrainian conflict never ends because it's virtuous or some nonsense. But what about the American people? I mean, life is getting worse. People are struggling, small towns are collapsing. What about the people that you're supposed to represent? What about Americans? And Mike Pence's response, while running for president of the United States, not president of frickin' Ukraine, or president of NATO, or to be in the European Parliament, he said, that's not my concern. He essentially went on the record during a presidential election, I guess you could argue, running for president saying, I don't care about the American people. That's not my focus. My focus is ensuring that the Ukrainians get more than they're already getting, which is over $100 billion, to fight a war that we have no personal interest or involvement in whatsoever. I get Joe Biden has a lot of personal interest in Ukraine, but the American people don't. This guy is literally prioritizing the war in Ukraine over the fentanyl crisis, the southern border crisis, the crime crisis, inflation. I mean, the list goes on. He says, I don't give a damn about any of that. We need to make sure that the Ukrainians are our #1 priority when it comes to legislation and spending American taxpayer dollars. That's what I heard. That right there, folks, is political seppuku. I can't stand this stuff, and it's probably becoming my #1 issue you at least in the top 3. Your stance on this Ukrainian conflict tells me all that I need to know. There is clearly a faction here that has absolutely no interest in ending this conflict. Mike Pence is part of that faction. Mike Pence is closer to Joe Biden than he is your average Republican voter. You know, Viktor Orban recently said the USA could end this war in 5 minutes. Bringing Ukraine into NATO means world war. I think that's a pretty accurate statement. Well, what's the US government's interest? Not the people's interest, but Joe Biden uniparty Democrat-Republican interest. It seems like their interest is World War III over negotiations, peace, and compromise.
President Zelensky, how soon after the war would you like to be in NATO? How soon after the war would you like to join NATO?
An hour and 20 minutes.
Here we go.
You guys ask really insightful questions.
All right, guys, we gotta get up.
Ukraine will become a NATO member 1 hour and 20 minutes after the war. Well, if that's your stance, then I don't know if there ever will be an end to this war. It might be 10, 15 years down the line. And that seems to be the plan. That seems to be the play. The endless provocation and continuation of this conflict. There's this little interaction that happened a couple of days ago with Joe Biden and a member of the press in Finland, in Helsinki, during a conference with Nordic leaders. The words used, I think, add a lot of context.
You've said that Ukraine shouldn't enter NATO until after the war is over. Are you concerned at all that those comments could motivate Putin to keep the war going or discourage him from entering peace negotiations? And is there a serious risk that this war could drag on for years? And do you see any path toward the war ending with Putin still in power?
First of all, no one can join NATO while a war is going on, where a NATO nation is being attacked, because that guarantees that we're in a war, and we're in a third world war. So that it's not about whether or not they should or shouldn't join. It's about when they can join, and they will join NATO. The issue of whether or not this is going to keep Putin from continuing to fight, the answer is Putin's already lost the war. Putin has a real problem. How does he move from here? What does he do? And so the idea that there's going to be what vehicle is used, he could end the war tomorrow. He could just say, I'm out. But what agreement is ultimately reached depends upon Putin and what he decides to do. But there is no possibility of him winning the war in Ukraine. He's already lost that war. Imagine anyway, he's already lost that war.
You know, the question itself said it all. The plan is to prolong this conflict. It's not to end the conflict. If America's interest was ending this conflict, then compromise and peace negotiations would be literally the #1 priority. But instead, the priority is to keep pushing it. I mean, that right there has been the strategy that got us into this conflict in the first place. After the 1990s, the expectation, even from Russia, was normalization in relations between the West and the former Soviet Union. And there was supposed to be deals, and there was supposed to be compromise. One of those compromises was the agreement made with Gorbachev to not expand NATO in what was known as the neutral zone. Well, that agreement was never respected, and they're taking it to a whole other level now with talks of admitting Ukraine into NATO. That is the biggest land border with Russia. They purposely poked the bear, provoked this conflict, and now they don't want to take any responsibility. They want to pretend as if it's good versus evil. You're on the side of good, and just keep pumping taxpayer dollars into it. Don't worry, at some point, Russian forces are going to run out of steam. Well, how long is that going to take? 10, 15 years? Never? They don't know, and they don't know on purpose. They don't want to know because they don't want it to end. They want it to go on forever and ever and ever. The exact opposite of what your average American probably wants. And especially what your average American probably wants their taxpayer dollars to be focused or spent on. You know, whatever your view is on taxes, when you're paying those taxes, you hope that that money in some way is either coming back to you or coming back to your children, the community and the country that you live in, the country that you're probably dedicated to making a better place. But instead it's going to fight endless wars. It's being wasted. It's being funneled. And when Mike Pence was challenged on that topic, he chose the globalist warmongers ahead of the American people people, and even had the audacity to say that the American people and their concerns, well, aren't his concern. Game over. I mean, it's not like this guy ever stood a chance at ever winning the Republican nomination, but I promise you, not only is his presidential campaign over, his career is finished. Great job, Tucker. Once again, you knocked it out of the park. That's it though, that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.